is the Dane Moore NBA podcast coming to you Friday night. It's July 12th, and Kyle and I are back from Thomas and Mack Center here in Las Vegas after the Wolves' first Summer League game. It was our first look at Rob Dillingham and Terrence Shannon in a Wolves jersey. Kyle figured we'll just kind of rip through all the guys that played because this is easily the most relevant Wolves Summer League roster that they've had. You got Dillingham and Shannon as first-round picks. You got Leonard and Miller and Minott, who obviously are on the big squad as well. All the two-way guys played. Daishen, Jaylen Clark, Jesse Edwards, even that Heafy kid from France. He was fun. So we'll get into all that stuff. But, welcome to Vegas. Where do you want to start?
You know where we're going to start. And it was we are out in Vegas. This is, I think, our 8th year you and I covering the team coming up. Been doing a lot of summer leagues. So we went and watched Wolves Pelicans, and we'll get into it. I think there was a lot of interesting things to come out of that. Maybe not with some of the guys you'd think. But Dane and I get back to the hotel room. It's 115 out here in the desert, and I'm a Minnesota sports fan, as many know. So I had to run right to the sportsbook quick, right by the entrance to the hotel, and get a little action in on a Twins money line. And as Dane and I walk in, I go straight to the sportsbook to make my bet. Dane looks to the right, and sitting by himself at a high top table at a bar called the Doghouse is Kawhi Leonard by himself. All his friends are in Abu Dhabi. It's just Kawhi Leonard in a sports bar at Resorts World hanging out by himself. And that, my friends, is how I would summarize every summer league I've ever been to. Just there is one of the best to ever do it. Watching, I think, Mariners Angels on TV and with one leg, and all his friends are across the country. So 2024 Summer League, what do you want him to start?
Well, first, that's all true. First, this episode is brought to you by Falling Knife Brewing Company, and they're showing the Summer League games in the tap room so the next game's on Sunday, right? We're recording this Friday night. The next game's on Sunday. They are going to show the Lynx Fever game. Okay. That's 3 Central on Sunday afternoon in the tap room there, and then they will also show the Wolves as Wolves Pacers on Sunday night as well. So, I mean, it's a pretty good game. I mean, fun basketball to watch. I think it's a Sunday afternoon. You want to fill it full of basketball. Head over to Falling Knife Brewing Company in Northeast Minneapolis. But where I want to start, I think, player-wise, if I would have wrote an outline in advance of the game, I would have been like, okay, we'll probably talk about Rob Dillingham.
Yeah.
Off the jump, and obviously we will talk about Dillingham, but Terrence Shannon Jr. is the story in that game. Our first chance to obviously watch him in person. Both of us are not big draft or college basketball guys, so we hadn't even seen much of Shannon play, period. And I mean, what I did watch of him at Illinois, just like on Synergy and stuff like that, was what popped was just that force, that physicality, that speed, kind of the man amongst boys look in the college game. And I think probably one of the questions with Shannon was like, is he going to still have that physicality, that size once he is a man amongst men? And now Summer League, it's not the NBA yet, but he looked just as physically dominant in that game today as he did in a lot of those NCAA tournament games where he was just getting downhill, forceful. Obviously, it was like, what was the second, third basket of the game? Daishen gets a steal. Shannon cocks it with his left hand and dunks on somebody right away. I mean, he's probably of the player. I mean, we didn't watch that many games today. He was the player, I think, that I saw today that looked the most like an NBA player, just watching him move. We talked about that last week of like, man, if we come back from Summer League and we're like, pretty sure Terrence Shannon Jr. is an NBA player, like rotation guy. That's a huge win. And we're only one game in, and you don't want to get too far carried away with Summer League at all. But Terrence Shannon Jr. looks like a guy, and we'll talk about it, that is for sure in the conversation for the end of the rotation, if not maybe expected to be that 10th guy in the rotation there. I loved what I saw from him today, and 23, 24 years old, whatever, but yeah, looked like the dude out there today, and that's big.
Finished with 25 points on 9 of 14 shooting, got to the line 8 times. also had 2 blocks, and they were both pretty nasty. Because, I mean, that was a little part of his game that, again, I wasn't super familiar with him coming in. But I definitely want to echo what you said about one game at Summer League. Don't want to get too ahead of yourselves. And by that, I mean, my note said, have fun playing in Australia, Joe Ingles. Because I think Terrence Shannon Jr., again, one game, 26 minutes, but he just brought a level of, I mean, talking to Chris Hines, the player development for the Wolves, who was coaching this team this year, he was kind of raving about it. I mean, he just brings the tenacity and toughness that I think the Wolves had last year. I think you have to if you have the best defense in the league. But there was something about him today that just when the ball was tipped, he kind of set the tone. And again, some of this, I'm not trying to discredit him. He's older than Josh. He's older than Leonard. He's a lot older than Rob in basketball years. But so then you'd expect him to come out and kind of set the tone. And again, talking to Chris Hines after the game, he did set the tone. And it was just a really, really impressive start for him because offensively he was just filling it up. And he has such a quick first move. I mean, he had, I think, 2 or 3 times where he had a travel call where he kind of would pump one way and then go the other way. And that's like a little
Gorgie travel. Yeah,
like that little critique of like getting the ball down first. But he plays with so much physicality that I even think guys like Rob Dillingham kind of, fed off that a little bit by attacking the glass or just trying to get into a guy. So it was really an awesome, and I should have known when you and I sat down baseline before the game started, and between you and I was a media reporter that I've never met who was from Illinois that covers Illinois basketball. It's like, oh, this kid's got a following, and it's kind of echoed since the draft, right? Like a lot of people that watch Illinois basketball have reached out and been like, hey, that guy is a lottery pick that slid for unfortunate reasons that I think the team has already addressed and kind of cleared up. But
and age.
Yeah. But I mean, if the Wolves, we'll get into Dillingham too, but the Wolves walk away from the 2024 draft with 2 lottery picks, a team that needed a kind of a jolt of offense and a jolt of energy and get up and down.
Energy was what I was thinking. It's like it's not just physicality with him, or what it looked like today at least. It was, there's like big, strong players who like they look physical when they're going downhill or when they have the ball in their hands, but like other times they look lethargic or kind of like waiting for that next opportunity. And I felt like that like energy, that spark was there on both sides of the floor the whole time. Chris Hines, who is Hines with an S, not Chris Heinwold's beat reporter. He's the Summer League coach that we'll be referencing. But I thought he had this quote was cool. He said, of Terrence Shannon Jr., he said, the kid has a talent that is energy. People don't understand that energy is a talent these days. He has his motor and he's premium gas.
So we went from the lawnmower a couple of years ago to now we have premium gas. Not unleaded. But I also thought too, like in terms of that energy or just kind of the all-encompassing things, especially the defense, there are multiple possessions on defense where he was, these guys have had 1 week of a training camp together. Maybe they've been in the gym a little bit, but this is just all a hodgepodge of new guys trying to play together. Mm-hmm. And I think Terrence Shannon Jr. might have had the defensive concepts down more than anyone. I mean, there's one possession where he was telling Josh where to get to on the wing. I just thought his leadership was really good. Again, he is an older rookie, but I think that's kind of what I came into this draft wanting, was one of those, vet. I was thinking more of like a point guard, but he doesn't matter what position he plays. He just knows how to play basketball. He brings something to this team that, I mean, if Ant is an RB1, Terrence Shannon Jr. is like an RB2, right? I mean, he just is that nice kind of change of pace, but also can give you what Ant gives you a little bit when Ant sits. And I just really impressed by him, really impressed talking to him after the game. He is so nice, really quiet, probably in the Jaden McDaniels pool of doesn't want to say a lot of words, but he kind of lets his game do the talking. And just an incredible performance against the Pelicans.
Yeah, just looking at my notes, it's kind of, again, a lot of my perspective is like, and this is with, I guess, all draft players, is you read the weaknesses section, or what I do is like read the weaknesses section and then like watch that for those things in practice in the game, right? So you saw the positives. Like the positives were affirmed just with the eye test of watching him play the game. But I thought like some of a concern with him is like, all right, what is like the catch and shoot jump shot look like? Mm-hmm. What does the consistency of the defense look like? And I think it was probably only one of that catch and shoot 3. It was the first or second quarter, the first half, and just it, like split second catch, shoot, went up with it right away. I think the shot looks good. It's not like a guy who I'm going to come in and be like, this might be a guy who shoots 28%. I didn't have any of that. Like I thought the shot looked good defensively. Like, and I noticed this too, watching him at Illinois. He's like, he pursues the passing lanes. He's looking for that pick six.
Mm-hmm.
All the time. He like pursues
Ant did in his rookie year.
Mm-hmm. And it's like with the same. There's one. He had the one where he, intercepted the pass, went the other way, dunked it, and I was thinking what it looked like when he went to go get the steal, like that straight direct line attack to the ball, looked a lot like when he went downhill to get to the basket.
Yeah,
like he pursues the ball in the same way that he pursues the rim. The one, probably the biggest knock on him, right, is playmaking. Being able to find others, and it was a 0 assist game for him. But I think he had at least like 2 or 3 that he passed to Dillingham. That Dillingham were good looks that Dillingham just missed. But yeah, I think that's part of going to need to be part of the evolution for him, is because this context was a lot like Illinois, right? Like he was the dude on this team. If and when he ever gets any minutes this season, he is not going to be the dude. He is going to be the 4th or 5th, maybe 3rd option at a time. And so that'll be part of the adjustment. And with that, we'll probably come needing to understand how to play make and find others there a little bit. But on this team, his role is to be, along with Dillingham, is to be like the offensive engine and, like Hines said, premium gas.
Also, we've talked way too much about him without reiterating how cool that dunk was in the first half that he had.
A couple dunks,
and then he finishes that dunk and then just kind of stares at his opponent, and then Daishen Nix in the back is still doing the pointing thing even in summer league, which is great. But the 0 assists will stand out again. One summer league game, it's 115 degrees outside, 120 degrees inside. Thomas and Mac. I don't know if the AC broke, but and this kind of pivots into Rob a little bit, but I also wonder too, there's stuff that happens behind the scenes that we don't really know. And there might have just been an emphasis. I thought there was an emphasis for Rob Dillingham tonight to play make a little more, to be a backup point guard, which is his role will be come October. He knows he's going to be backing up Mike Conley. And for Terrence, he might have just said never pass the ball. Just get downhill. He loves. It's really cool to watch this like in person. If you ever have a chance to go watch a game, even this upcoming season, he like actually loves getting hit. Like he loves absorbing contact. And that just kind of tells you, again, he led the team tonight with 8 free throws. I think he led the whole game with free throw attempts. So
I think he was 4th in the country in free throw attempts too.
And that was one of the 3 things that like stood out the most, is that guy is going to get to the line. And depending on how you consume basketball or how you idolize basketball, like I've always just wanted a couple players on a team that can just, like if he plays 10 minutes in any game, he might just get you 4 or 5 free throws. And those are easy points, resets your defense, gives everyone a break. So overall for him, if we're doing grades, like I thought he had an A game. He was the best player on the court for both sides on, a Pelicans team that had, was his first
Jordan
name?
Hawkins.
Jordan Hawkins, who's a nice player. I just thought Theige was the best player on the court all night.
Let's go to Dillingham. For Dillingham, it was 4 points, 5 rebounds, 5 assists. He shot 2 of 12 from the field, so 2 of 7 from 2, 0 of 5 from 3. Wasn't making shots, but like that's his thing, I don't. And what Chris Hines said after the game, and Rob too, when we talked to him, is like, one, I'm not really worried about the offense, and 2, I don't think that's like in his notes of what to be focusing on, right? In this summer league environment, it is the willingness to move the ball, be a playmaker. He's a point guard. I guess Daishen Nix out there too, but first possession of the game, right? Who brought the ball up? It was Rob Dillingham. I think he seemed focused on doing that part, and Chris Hines kind of raved about that after the game too, of like, we asked him to do these specific things. He did those things, mentioned like competing defensively. I thought the defense is always going to be a bit of an issue with him, but he had that one steal. He forced that one backcourt violation. Like Dillingham was trying on defense. And right now, I think those are the things we should be looking for with him, is like, what are the things he's doing here in Summer League or that he can maybe do in the league that isn't just getting buckets? And I think we saw a little bit of that from him now in these next couple of games. Like, let's make some more shots like that. that needs to happen. But yeah, it was I don't know, getting his feet wet sort of game. It's just, he was the 8th overall pick, but it just, I don't know, kind of given how many other players are on the team and how well Shannon played, he wasn't like front of mind really in what happened. But I guess what stood out to you from Dillingham's game?
I actually think there was a play that really stood out that should be, because again, he didn't shoot it very well tonight, and it didn't look good. I mean, he just kind of, not flat, I just kind of getting his legs under him. He just talked about, just all the training you do after college ends, and just it is chaotic. I've heard a lot of players talk about this their rookie year of just you go into one thing after the other, and then it's the draft, and then it's a lot of media stuff, and then you go meet the team, and it's just a lot of basketball. And I think his legs weren't really there to begin with, but there was.
He said that, right?
Yeah, and there was a play. I think it was in the second half coming our way, but you got Rob Dillingham, 8th overall pick, bucket from Kentucky, right? And he does get that steal, and he gets out in transition, and he's by himself, and he's a bucket, and he stops and literally throws the ball back to Jaylen Clark for Jaylen Clark's first ever NBA basket. Like, that was an opportunity where, okay, Rob can get 2 free points here, kind of feel like get himself going. Mm-hmm. And even in that point, it was a 2-on-0. And He was like, you know what? Let me find someone else. So there was definitely an emphasis. And Chris Hines, you had a really good quote after the game from him, but they were just really proud of how he kind of approached the whole game. And I thought that was really cool.
He said, quote, "I'm so proud of that dude. Number one, it's not about him scoring," was Hines talking about Rob Dillingham. Everybody wants to see how he can score. He's going to be a prolific scorer in the NBA one day. It's about understanding our culture and fitting into that culture. We'll develop everything else behind that. And with that being said, for me, I was just proud of how he handled the game, managed it. He took great shots. He didn't force anything. But one of the things that I loved about him was he competed on defense. He caused some turnovers. We got a backcourt violation because of him. That's who we are. And that is clear just in general with this team of like they're coaching this team within the identity of the Wolves, which is a physical team, a defensive team, a disciplined team. And that's not always the case with the Summer League team. It's kind of like, what is it? But it does seem like they are grooming these guys in the vision of like, for all of them. And we'll talk about Leonard, Miller, and Josh Minott and the two-way guys. But with all of them, it's like, all right, what are the skills that you can kind of show in an expanded role, but with kind of still within the idea of what your role would be on the big team? And I like that. I think that's the right way to go about it.
I think it's interesting to just kind of read his box score really quick. Finishes with 4 points on 2 of 12 shooting, 0 for 5 from 3, didn't shoot a free throw, 5 assists, as we talked about, 0 turnovers. So that's kind of something to put a pin in. He also had 5 rebounds, which again, if you want to kind of, we talked about Terrence, Shannon Jr., maybe not having the playmaking is kind of a, you got to say something negative about a first game. Rob is small.
Yeah, sorry. That was the very first thing.
Seeing him in person, I know you and I weren't at like the rookie or the press conference where they kind of got to introduce him to everyone. So this is my first time seeing him up in person, and he's a great kid. He has a really infectious personality that I think is going to build a Naz Reid kind of following in this fan base and in this community. But he's small, and he is going to have to, there's small people listening to this out there. Like, you got to kind of have to just put a chip on your shoulder, but probably okay, 5'10". But he's gonna have to just embrace that, because Summer League, and I appreciate this, like not calling a ton of fouls, but he did kind of get to the rack a little bit. Mm-hmm. Not only is he shorter, he doesn't, weigh a lot.
Right. So
his inability to maybe get some of those kind of 50-50 calls at the rim are going to be something he does need to put on a little weight. Mm-hmm. But I thought overall, again, that 5 rebounds was impressive because he is, I think, my height, and that 5 assists to 0 turnovers. He really was trying to make some plays today. And then when we got to talk to him after the game, he referenced again just how much Mike Conley's already been in his ear. Mike Conley was sitting courtside tonight with Karl Anthony Towns, with Naz Reid, with Connolly and Finchie and stuff. But if Rob is going to get minutes in mid-October when this season starts, it's going to be as the backup behind Mike Conley. And they still have Naz Reid and Anthony Edwards and now Terrence, Shannon. They have all these guys who can score. They need Rob to probably start playmaking first and foremost, then kind of get into his bag a little bit more as a scorer. So I was impressed by him tonight, maybe a B-, but he did some things that we didn't get to really see a lot in college, and that was impressive to me.
He only had 2 buckets, but I think the first one was the floater that he made.
Yep, it was.
And what I thought about at the time, I was like, oh, yeah, the Kyle Anderson shot.
Yeah.
And
it's a little faster.
Yeah, right. I was thinking about it, though, and I looked it up during the game, and the Wolves took 1,600 shots from floater range last season, and 300 of them were Kyle Anderson shots. So that is actually something that's kind of missing, in this team, like that ability to, get downhill, stop short, take that. Like, that's not an Ant's game, right? Like, Ant obviously doesn't need it as much because he weighs 80 more pounds than Rob Dillingham does. But I think that's what I was kind of thinking about. I'm like, what does Dillingham's offense look like once he is within 2-point range, right? Like, getting there, getting the floater down, I think is a big part of it. It's like, I'm thinking a lot about Trae Young, right? Like, what are the things that Trae Young does really well still, like, in spite of his height, right? And I think that should be a big part of his game. And in many ways, the Wolves need offense, and I think Dillingham can bring that.
And I was thinking one last thing that I don't know if you've ever talked about on a pod or whatever, but I think both these guys are clutch clients. And as soon as college basketball wrapped up, they were working out together. And I think that's really cool because they actually talked about that tonight. They talked about it during their kind of introductory press conference, but they have a chemistry. Like when they went to the Twins game and stuff, like they compete against each other. They really have each other's back. And I kind of think of like when Ant and Jaylen came in a little bit, I think it's nice, even though there's an age gap there, those guys are boys. And it's kind of nice sometimes to, I asked Rob what he thought of Terrence's dunk, and he was just kind of over the moon about how impressive it was. So I think it's cool to not only have these two rookies from this draft class, but also they kind of already have that little bit of a chemistry because, again, to your rotation point at the top, they're probably both going to maybe be playing in the same rotation in the second unit. So really, a good start from both of them. No one gets hurt, knock on wood, and some good shot making, some good playmaking, and kind of now build into what you can do in game 2 on Sunday.
You said Twins game, and I thought of Kawhi Leonard again.
He's still down there. We should go get him on the pod.
We should. Take our first break here. Today's show is brought to you by Your Home Improvement Company. And this summer, YHIC is running a special on both bathroom and window remodels. So for a bathroom, whether it can be just a simple tub to shower conversion or a full bathroom remodel. And if you get that done, Your Home Improvement Company's work is backed by a lifetime warranty, and they have a 30% off on that deal for the summer. So you can contact them if you're getting into the house projects this summer. Also, buy 2 get 2 triple pane windows for free is the other promotion they have going on, and those windows also come with a lifetime warranty and are installed by certified professionals. So if you think about a house renovation, think about Your Home Improvement Company. Go to yourhomeimprovement.co.com or call 866-777-YHIC. Your Home Improvement Company, where it's your home made better. And on, the home note, if you're buying a home, you're funding a home, Supreme Lending. This episode is also brought to you by Supreme Lending, and Supreme Lending is a winning mortgage experience. I can meet Ben Coulter with his mortgage dream team at Supreme Lending in Edina, Minnesota, with over 20 years in the business. Ben knows how to win big when it comes to mortgage deals. The Mortgage Dream Team offers a deep playbook to help. They have the 8-day close. You can close your loan in as fast as 8 days for a leg up on the competition. They have the $25,000 close on time guarantee. They guarantee your deal closes on time. And then the Minnesota Housing Program, which is up to $18,000 in down payment or closing cost assistance. In addition, you mentioned T-Wolves special, and you may be eligible for your first year at 1% below your note rate. Call Ben today if you are in that home buying process, as I know you are, Kyle, and call them at 612-268-5454, or you can visit twolvesmortgages.com for more information. Let Ben and his team help you win your dream home. All right, let's keep moving on, Kyle. I guess if we just sort of move down the roster, through the roster, and get to Josh Minott and Leonard Miller. Leonard Miller got poked in the eye, didn't finish the game, so I don't think he played that many minutes. I'll pull that up right here. Yeah, he only played about 15 and a half minutes in this game, had 10 points, 6 rebounds. Josh Minott had 12 points, 8 rebounds, 2 assists. Minott was 0-3 from 3. Miller did make 2 of his 5 3-point shots. I mean, I feel like they kind of got passed up in my mind, pecking order wise, by Terrence Shannon Jr. in terms of, maybe could go through the whole options for the 10th man spot, but those guys have a lot to, I think, prove, and are looking forward to showing and proving that in summer league. Leonard and Josh, which one of those guys you want to start with?
I think it's interesting how we kind of have naturally built this pod out, because you start segment 1 with the 2 new guys who are also first-round picks. And now this segment, we could even throw Jaylen Clark in there a little bit. Like, these are second-round picks. Mm-hmm. But because they've been here a little longer, you maybe, I was guilty of this, you maybe assume that they're a little more seasoned or polished or ready. Well, that might not be the case. Again, Terrence Shannon Jr. is older than all these guys. Right. But, again, someone said this a couple of years ago that was coaching the Wolves Summer League team, but they approach Summer League of kind of promoting the good and then just kind of putting a pin in the bad. Like, what did you not like? We can work on that the rest of the summer. What kind of flashed? And the Leonard Miller thing, he got poked in the eye and he was down for a while. I was like, this is Kyle Anderson 2.0. But I thought he was really good. Like, he finished with 10 points, 6 rebounds, 3 steals, no turnovers, hit 2 threes, actually led the team, I think, in 3-point makes, got to the line a little bit. He just was active, and he kind of looked like the guy. He didn't flash, maybe like a TJ, but he looked like a guy that if I just needed 10 to 12 minutes in November to come off the bench because Carl's out and they just need another big, that he could just, rebounding is a natural skill for him. His shot, you're the shot doctor. Every one of his 5 3-point attempts looked a little different, which is not great. But I just thought his activity, and he's as small maybe as Rob can be sometimes. Leonard Miller is just bigger, and he's a little more filled out too.
So that you mentioned, Carl missing time or something like that, and potentially plugging him in. We are viewing Leonard Miller as a big, right?
Yes, yeah, 100%.
I feel like there's a little bit of mixed messaging on that or confusion out there. Maybe that's just born out of the idea that there's no big minutes available on this team unless multiple centers get hurt. But I think Leonard Miller is a center at first. That's what I've been saying for a while, or at least a 4. He started at center in this game. I thought that was noteworthy. They didn't start Jesse Edwards, who's the 7-footer, would be the center. But if you wanted Miller to play, remember last year they had Minott playing guard wing, and they said, whether it was Finch or whoever it was, the summer league coach was like, yeah, no, we want Josh playing the wing. We want him guarding on the wing. That's where his opportunities are going to come from. And that's what the role they put him in there. With Wendell Moore Jr., they had played point guard last year, remember? And so I do always think it's a little bit noteworthy of the ways in which they're trying to use players in summer league, because that would probably be the role or job that they would have if they got an opportunity with the team. So I think the thought is Leonard Miller is a big 4 or 5 in the overall team depth chart, and because of that, not going to be in the rotation at the beginning of the season.
Yep.
That's not a bad thing. This is, if you're a 21-year-old big or 20-year-old big, not the ideal team to be on for getting playing time, but they drafted Leonard Miller as much like Josh Minott. They signed him to a 4-year contract, long-term vision with him. So my biggest thing that I noted, first thing I put down right away is he started at center, and that is what they're going to use him in to emphasize what I think is his best NBA skill right now, which is rebounding. Probably offensive rebounding, kind of like Vanderbilt, right?
Yeah.
I think if and when Leonard Miller cracks into the rotation, it will probably look a lot like the Jared Vanderbilt arc, where he starts playing 1 month and some garbage time, and it's interesting and it's energetic and it's impactful, and then an opportunity comes and kind of builds that out through doing his one thing well: energy, offensive rebounding, that sort of stuff, and then let the game expand sort of from there. That's kind of where I'm at with Leonard Miller right now.
Yeah, and again, that eye thing, we should probably clear up too, that he missed the rest of the game, but then C. Hines after the game told us that he'll be fine and probably should play on Sunday. So if he doesn't get hurt, he only played 16 minutes, and the rest of the starters all average 27. He probably finishes with 15 and 10 and 5.
Yeah.
And if that's the case, like we might be starting this whole pod talking about him, despite how good TJ was. So
Sure.
again, some of these guys, you're coming at different levels. You do kind of have to, as a Timberwolves fan, pull back this notion that all these guys need to be stars, because as for me, like I'm used to watching Summer League and like, okay, we have this lottery pick. I hope they can be the face of the franchise. Leonard Miller doesn't need to be that, but I just thought he was really solid tonight. At times I kind of forgot he was out there, but it's just
because he was doing his job, crashing the glass. And I think the one other aspect, despite kind of knocking his shooting form, is that he had as many threes as the rest of the 4 starters combined. And I don't like how the shot looks. I'm also kind of always weirded out by left-handers. But that is the skill that would separate him from a Vanderbilt, is his ability to, spread the floor a little bit. So is he a rotation guy? No, but does he look a little more polished than when he finished the season with the Iowa Wolves? I thought so, and he is the guy for me that I'm most excited to watch on Sunday, because we'll get a lot of Dillingham, and Terrence Shannon Jr. will show up again. But if Leonard Miller plays like 28 minutes on Sunday, I'm excited to see just kind of what he can build off of what he was doing today.
I'm just realizing this is just for the listeners. I'm sorry, on our microphone audio, I just turned on right now, so the audio that you've been getting through our other speakers probably not have been good for the first 30 minutes of this episode. Sorry about that. We'll mix it all together. We're kind of making this. This is not how we normally do podcasts. We're normally sitting at our desks.
We have an iPad in a hotel room on a suitcase in a corner. We spent 10 minutes trying to figure out the lighting.
Yeah,
but you know what? The show must go on.
The show must go on. Daishen Nix, I think of the two, unless you have anything.
Well,
more,
just on Josh
Minott.
Minott, 0 for 3 from 3, 3 for 11 from the field, 12 points, 8 rebounds, led the team in rebounding, had a block, 3 turnovers. He was forcing it a little bit. Mm-hmm. I still like Josh. I still think he has some skills. He did get to line 6 times, made all his free throws, which I don't think rookie year Josh was. I mean, sometimes he just couldn't get to the rim because he didn't have any handle. His handle looked a little tighter, so he's the most interesting of, I guess I would call the 5 young guys. If you throw Jaylen Clark in there, because I still don't know what he does. Like, what Rob's going to do to start October. You know what TJ can do. Leonard Miller's probably a year away just because he's looking at maybe the best front court in the league. But with Josh, I just, I know he's kind of been frustrated of not playing. I thought he tried to defend more on the perimeter tonight. So I don't really have like a grade for him. I don't know if you do, but
yeah, I think with Josh, it's about like, let's see what the summer league is. He's going to probably play. I mean, I'm assuming he's going to play in all the games or most of the games. And this is big. This is year 3 for him. He is young, 20. I think he's 21 still, but he's in a similar situation, I think, in my mind, to like Wendell Moore last season, where it's like, kind of need you to show me something in summer league for me to continue believing that there is a path here in the next, 0 to 12 months to become a rotation player. So, I don't think you leave this game being like, okay, yeah, Josh Minott is a completely different player, on a level where would be like, yeah, he might be the 10th man going into next season. But let's see what it looks like for 4 or 5 games out here and what kind of the full product of it all looks like.
Jaylen Clark was the other one I just wanted to throw into the mix because it was like, again, it was the new
second
rookies
rounders,
and now like the second rounders. Jaylen Clark looked like a guy who tore his Achilles 15 months ago. And he really copped that after the game. He was the happiest player on the team just because he finally got to play real basketball again. I was happy for him. He did finish with just 2 points. He had 3 steals, 1 for 9 from the field. It just all looked rusty. It all looked like a guy that has been working his way back. But he even said, kind of joking with us, like it took him 3 quarters to just kind of figure out what he was doing again. So that one's a big TBD because there's not much to say. Mm-hmm. But he's really active. He loves to get into you playing defense. I mean, I still kind of see some of the Nikhil comps. He doesn't have Nikhil's length. And again, his jump shot just kind of wasn't there, 0 for 2 from 3. So
it looked a little different to me. It was like
refined
in that like he's clearly, it's like a different mechanic. Like it was a lot more in front of his body than what I remember it looking like, which I don't know, I guess I'm just grabbing off of a past memory or something. But I wrote that down right away. Like that is something he's been able to. That was one of his biggest knocks, right?
Yeah.
Coming out is what's the jump shot, going to be like? The jump shot's going to need to be there so the defense can have its impact. And he's had the opportunity to. He's been shooting. I mean, for I don't know, probably 6+ months. Even if he hasn't played a game in 15 months. That's. I mean, this was his first basketball game. That like real basketball game that he's played in a long time, and like because of that, like he came off the bench. There's still like not like a physical ramp up, I would imagine, but like a comfort ramp up that he's trying to find. He's also kind of the long game, like he's on one of those 2-year 2-way contracts. He's on a 2-way again this year. It's a development piece, and again, much like with Minott, like let's see what it looks like in the aggregate 10 days from now. He'll get more opportunity, I'm sure, in another game. But yeah, he's part of that group that is in the mix at the bottom of the roster, and he was a second-round pick a year ago. I want to talk about Daishen. I thought that. I mean, we haven't even talked about him actually getting re-signed. We haven't done a pod since he was re-signed to a 2-way contract. He's gonna be on this team or as of right now, he's under contract for this team next season, and kind of by default, the third true point guard on the roster at the moment. Obviously, Nikhil's in the mix at point guard, and even Ingles to some extent, but Daishen's a point guard, or can play point guard. He's on this roster, and him along with Dillingham were the kind of lead ball handlers on this team in this game today. I thought he looked really good. Granted, he's a guy who's been in the league for a bit. He should look good, but I've always been intrigued by Daishen Nix, like that there might be something there, and that's kind of what this team needs to do. This is what you have to, when you're in this bad of a cap situation, you kind of do need to hit on some of these second round picks, even a 2-way guy that all of a sudden, develops into, I don't think about like with the Thunder, like Isaiah Joe and Aaron Wiggins. They kind of for a couple years are developing those guys, and then down the line they end up signing cheap contracts, and they're back of rotation guys. I'm not saying Daishen Nix is for sure that, but of all of these guys, you're kind of hoping, whether it be this season or even a year or two down the road, that one of them is popped and you're like, hey, this is maybe a rotation guy, on the Wolves once more opportunities come. And I don't rule Nix out of being in that mix, even if on the fringe of it, if that makes sense.
If Terrence Shannon Jr. is thick, Daishen Nix is thicker. He's like 231, and he plays like a running back. And to your point, I thought this was a really good way to put it. He's been in the league a little bit, so you expect him to kind of be productive out there. But it's when you're not in summer league that's kind of the it for your career, and you expected him to kind of be the vet of this team tonight. And despite how good Terrence Shannon Jr. was, he was kind of gassed up coming into this. I was like, I bet you Terrence Shannon Jr. is going to be kind of fun. I thought Daishen Nix was the most surprising. And also, if you're a degenerate, he's the reason they won the game. He was a team high, plus 17. He just made a lot of winning plays. He finished with 14 points, only took 7 shots, got to the line 6 times, 5 assists, 4 rebounds, 3 steals, and a block. He was everywhere. I thought he kind of knew at times that the team long-term wanted to get Rob some force-feed him possessions, after a made basket, him and Rob were both under the basket, and they got the ball to Rob. Let's see what you can do, create. He just was very kind of acclimating to all his other teammates, but when he wanted to get downhill too, I think TJ's 225 pounds on the media report. Daishen Nix is 231. He's big, and he uses that size pretty well. But I'm interested too because when those 2-way contracts get announced or whatever, they're not the sexiest thing in the world. And we knew Jaylen Clark was on one. I know Jesse Edwards got one, and then Daishen Nix kind of filled out the third one. So I would imagine there was a couple people that were maybe bummed that it wasn't someone else, or just that's a small boat. Let's go for the mystery box. But I think Daishen Nix is kind of, from what I saw in one game, again, let's see it all week, that is kind of like the perfect cheap contract emergency point guard that if you needed him,
right? Yeah,
he can come in and he knows the system. He's physical. He can defend. So for that role,
they maybe still need a third point guard.
Yeah,
but if they don't, and there's a lot of roster and cap restrictions and all that sort of stuff that this team has, if one of your point guards is going to be on a two-way that is a kind of maybe if somebody gets like if Mike Conley gets hurt, maybe he is in the rotation. Like it's nice to have a guy that does have NBA experience. He played a lot for the Rock. I mean, it was that bad Rockets team, but he played a lot, and I like him as a two-way guy. Like I think the likelihood between Daishen Nix, Jaylen Clark, and Jesse Edwards, if I had to pick one of those guys to be like, 3 years from now, one of those guys is like still in the league and in a rotation, I think I would pick Daishen Nix. I think most Wolves people would say Jaylen Clark, and I don't say that as a knock on Jaylen Clark, but like, I don't know. I think he has whatever that X percentage is of making that happen. That's just, I don't know, my having watched him for a bit.
The floor with him is just higher because he's been in the league a little bit longer. He gets it. He's been in this system now a little bit longer. So he is the break glass in case of emergency right now as the roster stands, kind of third point guard or whatever. So, but again, I really liked how you said that you kind of expected like, hey man, you've been in the league a little bit. Like you should probably come out and show something. And that is like summer league in a nutshell, is guys that have even sniffed the NBA or the big leagues, even if it's just being on the bench pointing at guys getting dunked on, they should come into this and just play like adults more compared to some of the rookies that are head in the clouds. And he did that tonight. Again, I thought he played really well. Him and Terrence Shannon Jr. were complimentary and played really well. And those two guys just were the toughness that, I mean, these summer league games can get a little weird and a little high scoring and a little free flowing. To hold them to 74 points, I know that sounds so wild because it's a summer league game, but they really did kind of tighten the screws in certain spots. I thought it was Daishen and Theige. So good games from that backcourt, and I'm excited to see both of them again on Sunday because they bring a level of physicality that helps Rob being so small, kind of balance it out.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't have much on Jesse Edwards, but we should mention him because he is on the two-way, so he will be there in camp. He'll be on the roster. He'll be on the bench this season, provided he stays on that contract. He is another older rookie, and I think he's 23. So you would hope that he looked somewhat ready. He did not in this game. Again, we'll give him the same thing we were giving Minott and Clark. Like, let's see a couple more games. It's a little bit different. Like, he's obviously new to being in the NBA in general, but yeah, nothing really from him. He's a 7-footer, in the discount Rudy Gobert, archetype on this team. I mean, he didn't play that much, but his first pass he didn't catch and kind of fumbled it.
He had a little Rudy Gobert hands, a little bit. Like he and again, these guys are all trying to figure out how to play with one another. Like as we learned with Rudy, he likes to catch the ball in certain spots. You can't just throw it to him wherever. I think maybe Jesse Edwards, if you want to try to make an apology, that's kind of what he needed to. But he is tall. Like, that was my first takeaway because I wouldn't have known who he was before this. So, had a couple blocks. Yeah, nothing offensively. Didn't really grab a lot of rebounds. Played 18 minutes. But I will just, put a pin in it and give him the leeway of let's see game 2, 3, 4 out in the desert. But, I mean, a two-way contract is, as we just said about Daishen Nix being an emergency point guard, those two ways are important, right? Like, you don't want to just burn him on, like, nepotism. So if he doesn't pop at training camp, maybe they replace him with something else. Because just to kind of segue, we've gone almost through everyone on the roster. I think Wieskamp, what's this? Do you know what his first name is?
Joel.
He had a 3, not bad. Jaylen Clark obviously did his
What about
thing.
the Heafy kid? I thought he was...
I was going to say, so Jaden Ledee actually was a team high, plus 18. He got 2 rebounds in really big spots. Again, if you had the Wolves minus 2.5, congrats. But that Heafy kid he's an NBA player, and I was bugging you all game just telling you that. So his story, for those that are not aware, how did he get on this team?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know super details on it, but he was was with the French national team in camp, in the same way that Leonard Miller was with Canada, I think.
Got it. Okay.
So kind of what I heard was one of the last cuts from the French national team for the Olympics or something along those lines, and wound up on the on the Wolves Summer League team. I guess I don't know specifically if there's some sort of Rudy connection there. I would imagine there is. It was like a name when I'm, talking to people after going through the roster of the names I know, and I'm texting who's this guy? What's this guy's story? He was the one where they're like, oh, they're interested. in him, and he was interesting today too. I mean, he's small. I mean, he's small like Dillingham.
He's like if Dillingham and Daishen Nix had a kid.
Yeah, the hair.
The hair. But he was also, just for tonight, he was the best point guard on the floor for both teams. Like, he has a little bit of that. I mean, it's so, I'm stretching here, but like, I always like to say floor general, so I just think of Chris Paul. But he had some floor general in him of getting guys in the right spots. He was also left-handed, but he could pull that thing on a string, kind of get to the mid-range, finish with 11 points and 5 assists, 3 steals. Again, you kind of, as you go an hour into a NBA Summer League podcast, you start really trying to find, penny slots. Yeah. But I thought he's an NBA player. That's kind of my take on him. Is if each team gets 3,
that's high praise, man.
If every team gets 3 two-way contracts,
sure,
I think he's a two-way contract guy. So to me, he's an NBA player. But yeah, he's another guy too that if they let him play 15 minutes a game this next week, just a really interesting type of player. But also, really small.
Okay, I think we kind of ripped through some of that. You wanted to, wrap it by talking a little bit about Ant, Team USA. I mean, we haven't done a pod since that first game against Canada. Obviously, Ant. I mean, I think everybody listening to this knows Ant looked awesome in that game. Didn't start, but kind of looked the most like ready to go because the starters did not for Team USA. But it's just kind of like it's another sort of feather in Ant's cap, right? Of like he delivers, and I think particularly in that context, in FIBA play last year with what he did, kind of just got assigned a spot in the pecking order and leaped up higher, and it seems like he's doing that with Team USA again this year, and I think he's going to be hard to not start or not at least not play a lot for the Olympics team. So just another Ant's awesome, like what
It'd be a great time for Kawhi to come into the room and tell us what he thinks of Ant.
We have the microphones working? Yeah.
No, I just think with Ant...
What if we actually had Kawhi on and I forgot to turn the microphones on?
Nah, he probably would have said 6 words anyway. We could have just recapped him. I do think with Ant, because we did a bunch of pods kind of to start July, and I had this take or this idea of what if they just take a half step back in the regular season, right? To try to acclimate some of the guys that we just talked about for an hour. And then I watched an exhibition game, right, against Team Canada the other night, USA versus Canada, and I just put in my notes, like, what if they just take 2 steps forward because Ant's just, again, Ant, All-NBA, Jaylen, All-Defense, Nas, 6-man, they all took leaps in last year, right? And then I guess I just maybe was burnout from a long season or a lot of pods, but I was just kind of like, okay, now let's pivot to the rookies. Like, what if some of those guys just take another leap? Right. And I think for a short dose in an exhibition game,
what does that leap look like to you for Ant? Like next year, like what would that? I don't know. I guess how would you describe or define what that looks like? Maybe not even in play. Maybe it's just like, he's like I know he made 2nd team All NBA, right? So you call him he was, according to that, top 10, top 15, whatever player in the league last year. Is it kind of like Shea, like what Shea did this last year? I mean, Shea was like legit in the MVP conversation, but if Ant is like 5th or 6th in MVP voting, something like that, right? Is that what we're talking about?
Yeah, and
that's a high bar, but
I also think sometimes too, when this was evident, this has been evident for years, the MVP conversation, because it goes all season long. Like, we talk about MVP in December, which makes no sense, but it kind of becomes a little narrative based too. And I think if Ant were to be a focal point of Team USA and that just bleeds into the season, he's just going to have more and more people loving him. That's like, he's just going to be getting spoon-fed some MVP votes. But yeah, I think if he went from, when you get to the top 10 in the NBA, we've never really talked about this on a pod, but the difference between like the top 5 players in the NBA and the top 10 to me is vastly different.
Sure.
Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? So like if you're the 9th best player in the league, that's incredible because there's 450 guys in the league, but you might still have a Grand Canyon size gap between you and the 5th player. So if, let's say, Ant was the 9th best player in the league this past season, if he's the 5th best player next season, and that's, I mean, screw a half step forward, this team might just take 2 steps forward and have, a 3, 4, 5 game lead in the 1 seed come April in the West. So I just thought I don't know what it would look like. I'm kind of puzzled by that question, but not in a bad way. The way he came into an exhibition game with all that talent on obviously Team USA, but also on Team Canada, and just kind of did a little Terrence Shannon Jr., just put his head down and got to the rim and just brought a level of energy. I mean, you see the fans in an arena with Stephen Curry and LeBron James losing their shit over Anthony Edwards, and he's billowing to the crowd and stuff. So, again, another exhibition game. That's all we have to kind of point to right now in the summer, but it just kind of made me think. I hadn't thought of it yet. I just thought Ant's all NBA. He gets the boost in pay. Like, he's done it. He's made it. And it's like, what if he just continues to get better? Like, what if he is?
Well, it should be the expectation, right?
What if he's an all-star starter, right? And then what if in March or April they're talking about is he the best player in the league? That's a pretty large gap to get to. But I just was really impressed by him because Team USA is really cool for guys like us, and I'm sure a lot of people listening to this, because I'm watching a lot of the guys that I grew up at a specific point in my life of really caring about the NBA and watching them all, KD, AD, LeBron, win all these titles, and they were kind of deferring, or they needed this kid who's 22, the youngest player on the team, or him and Halliburton, to kind of lift them up. It's infectious, and I think that's what the Wolves get a lot too from Ant, is just his tenacity, his drive, his energy, his personality is infectious. So I'm excited to watch more of these Summer League games these next couple of days, but then I'm going to pivot immediately into, Team USA has some fun exhibition games coming up.
Monday against Australia, right?
I think they play Australia, and I can't remember.
South Sudan, and can't remember what the last one
then
is.
they have an easier group, but if you're a Minnesota Timberwolves fan, compared to even like last summer, like you get really heavy dose of what does the back end of this whole thing look like and who could maybe force themselves into the rotation. And then you pivot right into who is the head of the food chain, who's the head of the snake. And it's just been a really good week, I think, for Minnesota Timberwolves basketball.
Yeah. No, and I mean, I think we know there's like fat to trim on Ant's game, right? Like if we are calling him,
I thought you were saying that literally because I didn't like he was wearing a full shirt. That might have been a little. That might not be in best basketball shape.
I think he was looking like jacked. But right, I mean, it's the stuff we talk about. Yeah. We talk about all during the season. It's like, can you do a little bit more of the playmaking? Can you, as his processing speed continues to go, like. You're right. It is a big jump to go from being the 10th best player in the league to like the 5th best player in the league. But I think that's probably what it is for Ant. It's like it's getting better at some of the things that he's not an A at yet, and just kind of a little bit better in all of those areas. Plus, just like a growing confidence, a growing physicality into being. He's not entering his prime yet, but like. Being 22, 23 years old, like that's a different part in just your evolution as a athlete, right? That combined with processing the game more is going to make him a better player. I don't know if that jumps him from the 10th to the 5th best player or whatever. Those are kind of arbitrary lines to draw anyways. But yeah, your original point was, if some things don't work with this roster, maybe this team, quote unquote, takes a half step back. But Ant can make up for that if that even exists, right? And and maybe more. And if ultimately they're gonna achieve their goal of going to a championship or winning a championship, like those things, that has to happen, right? He has to get to that point, and it's good that doesn't seem like a totally. It isn't a crazy thing that we're talking about Ant being. Like on the MVP ballot next year is like 6th in it. That in and of itself is awesome. That's such a progression.
For the same reason that he got clowned a little bit when he doing an Ant thing said like I'm the team's first option or whatever, right? And like that if Ant and people listening to this do more than maybe like your general NBA fan, that's just kind of who Ant is. But then you kind of saw in that game 5 of the, I think maybe 5 Hall of Famers or damn near close start the game, and they kind of start out flat, and they bring this kid off the bench, and he kind of lifts all tides just like he's done in Minnesota. So, I don't think it's hyperbole to say that he could be the MVP next year. I thought it was really cool to see him because I didn't know. Like last year, he was looking around the locker room and it was like, okay, it's Jaren Jackson Jr. who's good and like Austin Reeves. Like those are my competition to be the guy. Now he looks around and it's just a bunch of dudes who all have rings and deep resumes, and he still kind of was the dude.
Yeah.
And that's for a franchise that has only had one other of those guys in 35 years. I mean, that's special. And anything you think, I mean, there's no hyperbole with Anthony Edwards. Anything you think he can probably do. And if he does it next year, everything I've said about
it's possible that he can do it. Yeah.
Anything I said about being slow or gradual or taking a half step back or not worrying about the regular season, he might just say, bleep it, like, we're just going to win 58 games.
Right. You got anything else that you wanted to hit on? Do we miss anything?
I kind of want to go downstairs and see if Kawhi's watching Twins Giants right now, see what he bet.
We could do that. Again, I'm sorry to the listeners that those first 30 minutes were pretty rough audio. It was just going through the camera there, but this was fun. I always love doing these. It's crazy that we can find 60 minutes to do a podcast off of Summer League games, and we will do it again on Sunday night after that game happens.
Little off season for us. Like I said, we started a YouTube channel last year, and I think people have really liked it, and we always try to ask to subscribe to it. So sometimes those pods go up before the pods on Apple and Spotify. Also, it's a cool way to kind of want to build up the comment section. Like if you had thoughts from game 1 of the Summer League thing, go drop them on the YouTube comment section. Dane and I will read those tomorrow. We'll kind of try to bring those up on Sunday. But yeah, little off season for us. So those first 30 minutes, all my good takes are going to be kind of blurry. But we're going to keep pumping out content. I mean, it was nice to kind of take a break in June and kind of do some personal stuff, you and I. But seeing these guys, seeing Finchy today, doesn't have a brace on, right? Talking to Tim a little bit, kind of get rejuvenated again.
Did you mention that Carl and Nas and Luca and Mike, they're all there, and we got to talk to all of them a little bit. It's I don't know. Summer League is always this split second of oh, we're back, and then we're and then it shuts down for August before we kind of ramp up for training camp, whether that's for us podcasting and them too as a team. But I just always love this week, and like you said from the jump that we've been doing this and coming here for a long time. It's just fun to see all these people we maybe see online, or maybe if I travel to Denver or wherever and run into some of the Portland people we ran into today. As always, Summer League is one of my favorite weeks of the year.
And as many outside of the Lakers, which are their own breed, as many Timberwolves jerseys in Thomas and Mack today when Timberwolves games weren't going on as any other team.
Sure.
I think this is a really cool moment. Again, everything we just talked about with the young guys and the head of the snake, they're building something, and they took a little time off as well, but now we're full speed into, can Rob be the backup point guard for a contending basketball team?
Right.
Can Terrence Shannon Jr. be an old rookie who can slot right in and give you 15 minutes a game on a team that probably kind of choked away a special opportunity in the Western Conference Finals because they couldn't score enough points?
Yep.
So really interesting stuff. And then, we pivot into not only Ant and Team USA, but what Rudy, I didn't get to catch it today, but it was Rudy and Wemby versus Jokic. That's incredible basketball. Joe Ingles doing his thing in Australia, and then Nikhil with Canada. So the Minnesota Timberwolves are playing basketball all over the world right now, and it's all meaningless in a sense right now, but it's all building towards when this thing does ramp up in October. They want to build off of what they did and how they ended in May.
Yeah, no, I'm looking forward to it's gonna be a summer full of a lot of basketball, and a lot of basketball this week at Summer League. We appreciate you all listening. Kyle, appreciate you doing it. Again, we will be back recording Sunday night with the mics on the whole time, and that'll be out sometime on Monday morning. Until then, he's Kyle, I'm Dane. Peace out.
How I'm feeling, man, I hope it never stop, yeah. Grinning hard so you can find me in the crowd, yeah. Don't let standards ever bring you down, yeah.